Eli blinked against the harsh light of the alien enclosure, his hands pressed against the smooth, cold walls. He wasn't sure how long he had been here, days, weeks. Time seemed meaningless inside the glass-like habitat where he and the other humans were kept. Outside, towering figures moved with precise, elegant motions. Their skin shimmered like liquid metal, and their eyes glowed softly with a color he could not name. These were the aliens who had brought humans to their world, claiming they were fascinating, harmless creatures. Pets. Nothing more. At first, Eli had been frightened. He remembered the loud hum of the transporter, the blur of stars, and then the gentle but firm pressure of alien hands, guiding him into this strange new reality. They spoke in clicks and tones, a language he could not understand, and gestured constantly as if every motion carried meaning. His fellow humans, all wide-eyed and confused, had whispered to each other in their small, secret voices, but the aliens had always stopped them, shaking their heads with puzzled expressions. Eli sat cross-legged on the smooth floor, watching a group of aliens inspect another enclosure. One human, a small girl, held a colorful orb the aliens had given her. She rolled it between her hands, fascinated, while the aliens scribbled in thin, floating devices that hovered beside them. To the aliens, humans were toys, objects to observe. But to Eli, they were beings with thoughts, feelings, and, most importantly, voices that had not yet been heard. He tried to remember his life before the abduction. Earth seemed like a distant dream now. The smell of rain on concrete, the chatter of crowded streets, the warmth of his mother's hand. Here, none of that mattered. Survival was simple. Eat, sleep, and avoid drawing negative attention from the caretakers. Still, the spark inside him refused to die. He would not accept this life as a permanent cage. Across the room, another human, a young man named Sam, tugged at the bars of his enclosure, his face red with frustration. "We can't just stay here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Eli nodded, though he knew speaking too loudly could bring the aliens rushing over with their strange tools, poking and prodding. "We'll find a way," Eli whispered back. "We just need to understand them first." The aliens were observant, patient, and utterly confident in their control. They had made the humans think they were powerless by providing everything they needed: food, water, and even little entertainment devices that flickered with light and sound. But Eli noticed patterns in their behavior. How they tilted their heads slightly before a decision, how their glowing eyes would flicker when confused, how they never expected humans to do more than react. One day, curiosity led Eli to experiment. He had noticed that certain sounds, sharp, repeated clicks, caught the attention of the aliens. Other humans avoided these sounds, fearing punishment, but Eli pressed forward. He made small, deliberate noises, testing whether the aliens responded predictably. At first, nothing happened. Then one of the caretakers paused, its glowing eyes narrowing. It tilted its head, studying Eli, and for the first time Eli felt the faint thrill of recognition. "You mimic," a soft voice said in broken clicks. It was not a sentence Eli understood, but the tone carried meaning. The alien was surprised, curious, cautious. Eli grinned, though no one could see it. Yes, he thought to himself. "I can learn. I can make them understand." Days turned into a routine of subtle experiments. Eli would whisper phrases under his breath, repeating them over and over. The words felt strange in his mouth in this foreign world, but they were his. Slowly, he discovered that he could combine gestures with sounds to convey very simple meanings. One morning, when an alien caretaker approached, Eli raised a hand and made a clicking noise, followed by a pointing gesture toward a leaking tube in the enclosure. The alien froze, its eyes widening. It tilted its head in a way Eli had never seen before, then scribbled rapidly on its hovering device. Another human had been too afraid to act, but Eli had seen danger and instinct had driven him to speak. The alien left, apparently confused, but Eli felt a surge of power. He had communicated something real, something important. Eli realized that other humans were watching him more closely now. Some whispered questions. "What did you do?" asked Sam. Eli smiled faintly. "I told them something they couldn't ignore," he said. "We might have a chance if we keep learning. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humans were more than pets, that they were beings capable of thought, creativity, and courage." That evening, as the alien sky dimmed into a strange violet hue, Eli sat with the other humans in the corner of their shared enclosure. He gestured and made sounds, trying to teach them what he had learned. Slowly, hesitantly, other humans began to mimic him. A network of secret communication began to form, small whispers that only humans could understand. But not all aliens were oblivious. One night, Eli caught the shadow of a caretaker lingering outside their enclosure longer than usual. Its eyes flickered strangely, like lightning underwater. Eli froze, holding his breath. He realized that their small victories might already be observed. They were walking a dangerous line. One step wrong could undo everything. Yet fear could not stop Eli's determination. Each day he practiced. Each day he learned a new sound, a new gesture, a new way to make the aliens understand. He knew that the moment humans were finally acknowledged as intelligent would be the moment the balance of power began to shift. One morning, the aliens brought in a new human, a young boy, timid and confused. Eli watched as the aliens tried to coax him into playing with the toys and gadgets. The boy froze, unsure what to do. Eli stepped forward, gesturing gently, whispering a few simple words he had been practicing. The boy's eyes widened in recognition. He copied Eli's sounds. The aliens watched, bewildered, as the boy joined the silent network Eli had started. It was a small act, but it felt monumental. Humans were beginning to speak, not just with voices, but with meaning, with understanding. The aliens' assumptions were fragile. Their belief in human helplessness was beginning to crack. Eli looked out through the translucent walls at the alien city beyond. Its towers shimmered, strange energy pulsing through them like veins of light. For the first time, he felt not fear but hope. If humans could learn to communicate, to understand, perhaps they could even learn to resist. Perhaps one day they could take control of their own fate. And yet, deep inside, Eli knew that the moment they fully realized what humans could do, the aliens might respond with overwhelming force. The stakes were higher than ever. He had taken the first step, but the journey ahead would demand courage, cunning, and patience beyond anything humans had known before. As the violet night deepened, Eli whispered to himself, "We are more than they think, and soon they will see it too." A faint click sounded in the corner, a signal that another human had joined his secret efforts. Eli smiled faintly, feeling the first stirrings of a revolution that had not yet begun but could not be stopped. The humans were no longer just pets. They were learning. They were growing. And soon they would speak, and the aliens would never underestimate them again. The next morning, Eli awoke to a quiet murmur of movement in the enclosure. The humans around him were stirring, stretching, and cautiously speaking in soft whispers that only they could hear. Each word, each gesture was a part of the secret language Eli had begun to teach them. It was slow, clumsy, and imperfect, but it worked. Communication was their first weapon, and they were learning how to use it. Eli's mind raced as he remembered the moment from the day before, the small warning he had given to the aliens about the leaking tube. They had paused, confused, their glowing eyes flickering with something unfamiliar. It had been the first crack in the carefully constructed illusion that humans were harmless pets, and Eli intended to widen that crack until it became impossible for the aliens to ignore. The enclosure doors hissed, signaling the arrival of the alien caretakers. Tall, shimmering figures glided toward the humans with their floating devices in hand. Eli froze for a moment, his pulse quickening. The aliens moved gracefully with precision, but there was an odd hesitation in their steps today. They seemed uncertain. Eli sensed it instinctively. Something had changed. "Observe them carefully," one of the aliens said in clicks and soft tones to another. Eli didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Their attention was heightened. They were watching him. He turned to the other humans, gesturing quickly and whispering a few practiced sounds. "Stay calm. Do not speak unless I do," he instructed silently with his gestures. The other humans nodded, some trembling but trusting him. They had learned to follow his lead. As the caretakers approached, Eli decided to test the limits of his secret. He let out a soft, clear sound, forming words he had been practicing in private. "Stop," he said. Not a shout, not a command, just a single word. The aliens froze. One of them tilted its head, its glowing eyes flickering rapidly. It had never heard a human form words with meaning before. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. The other humans watched with wide eyes, waiting. Eli could feel their anticipation building. Then another human, emboldened by Eli's courage, whispered a word in response. It was imperfect, broken, but it carried meaning. The caretakers exchanged rapid clicks and scribbles on their devices. Their confusion was clear. Eli's heart raced. He had crossed a boundary. The line between pet and being capable of thought had just been blurred. The aliens left the enclosure abruptly, moving with a speed that betrayed both caution and fear. They retreated to a corner of the alien city, where they whispered among themselves. Eli watched from the glass walls, his mind sharp and alert. They were trying to understand, to plan, to predict what he might do next. But he was already thinking further, faster. Over the next few days, Eli intensified his efforts. Every gesture, every sound, every whispered word was carefully observed. He taught the humans how to communicate silently and subtly, combining gestures with soft vocalizations. By now, a small group of humans had begun to follow his lead, their confidence growing. Eli realized that knowledge was their true power. He began teaching the humans to observe the aliens, how they moved, what patterns they followed, and how they reacted to various stimuli. It was not just about speaking. It was about understanding the ones who thought themselves superior. One afternoon, a new test arrived. The aliens brought a device that humans had never seen before, shimmering panels with moving lights and strange symbols. It was supposed to entertain, to distract, and perhaps to assess their intelligence. The humans approached cautiously, but Eli had an idea. He studied the symbols, noticing patterns in their arrangement. Slowly, he began tapping on the panels in a sequence he thought the aliens would recognize. The lights responded. They moved, flashed, and pulsed according to Eli's touches. The other humans gasped, mimicking his movements. The aliens, observing from the corner, tilted their heads in surprise. Their confidence in human incapability was waning. Eli's boldness grew. He began practicing longer phrases, attempting to string words together in a way that might convey complete thoughts. One evening, as the alien caretakers returned to check on them, Eli spoke more clearly than ever before. "We understand. We are not what you think." The alien nearest to him froze, its body trembling ever so slightly. Its glowing eyes widened as if trying to process the impossibility before it. The humans around Eli watched, their eyes wide with amazement. For the first time, a pet had spoken not just a word, but a statement. A truth. That night, Eli gathered the humans quietly. He explained with gestures and whispered words what had happened. "They are afraid," he said softly. "They don't know what to do when we show intelligence. This is our chance. We must be careful, but we can learn and we can act, step by step." The humans nodded, some still hesitant, others beginning to feel a spark of hope. They had never thought of themselves as more than toys or curiosities. Now, under Eli's guidance, they were beginning to see themselves as something greater. The next day brought new challenges. The aliens, now wary, changed their approach. They separated humans into smaller groups, watching each closely. Any attempt at communication was met with intense scrutiny. Eli noticed that their responses were slower, more cautious, and sometimes confused. The humans followed his lead, speaking only when necessary and using gestures to convey meaning silently. One of the caretakers approached Eli directly, its glowing eyes flickering rapidly. It reached out a hand, not in aggression, but in a gesture that seemed almost questioning. Eli hesitated. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment to truly test the boundaries of alien assumption. He spoke, clearly and firmly. "Do not underestimate us." The alien froze, its body trembling slightly. The other humans around him gasped. The creature scribbled furiously on its floating device, trying to make sense of what it had just heard. For the first time, Eli realized that fear had entered the minds of the aliens. They had not expected the humans to speak, to reason, or to express themselves. That night, Eli could not sleep. He walked the enclosure slowly, thinking about what had happened. He knew the aliens would adapt, that they would try to regain control. But he also knew that humans had discovered something vital. Their voices, their thoughts, their intelligence could no longer be ignored. A faint rustle behind him made him turn. One of the younger humans, a girl who had barely spoken since her arrival, approached. She whispered a single word, imperfect but meaningful. "Teach." Eli smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had sparked something small but powerful. Humans were beginning to awaken, to realize that they were not mere pets but beings capable of thought, strategy, and communication. Outside the enclosure, The alien city shimmered under a violet sky. Lights pulsed in rhythmic patterns and strange shapes moved with silent purpose. Eli knew the aliens were talking, debating, and planning. But he also knew that humans were learning too. The balance of power was shifting, slowly but surely. As the stars twinkled faintly above the alien towers, Eli whispered to himself and to the humans who now listened intently, "We are not what they think. We will speak. We will be heard, and they will see. They will see us." A faint click echoed from the corner of the enclosure, a signal from another human who had learned the new language. Eli's heart lifted. They were no longer alone, and they were no longer silent. The night deepened, carrying with it the promise of change. Humans were awakening, and the aliens would never see them the same way again. And so the first real act of defiance had been made. Eli had spoken, and in speaking, he had begun a revolution that had only just started. Eli woke before the alien caretakers arrived. The enclosure was quiet, save for the soft rustling of humans stretching and shifting in their small spaces. Over the past few days, the humans had grown bolder, speaking in whispers, tapping out gestures, and learning to understand one another. Eli smiled faintly. They were no longer just surviving, they were preparing. He moved quietly among them, checking to see if anyone was frightened. A few younger humans had tears in their eyes, still unsure of what was happening. Eli knelt down, whispering softly, "We are learning. Fear will not help us. Every day we grow stronger. Every day we understand more." The children nodded, their faces brightening with the spark of hope. Eli had spent hours observing the aliens. They moved with precision and confidence, but the confusion after his last act of defiance was still visible. Some of the aliens would linger near the enclosures longer than necessary, their glowing eyes flickering rapidly. Others whispered to each other in a hurried rhythm, their floating devices recording every movement. It was clear. They had begun to fear what humans could do if left unchecked. "This is our chance," Eli said, gathering the humans in a quiet corner. "They think we are harmless. They think we can only react, but we can act. Step by step we will show them what we are capable of." The humans leaned in, eager and attentive. Eli had already taught them to communicate quietly, using gestures, taps, and whispers. Now he introduced the next step, observation and planning. "Watch how they move," he instructed. "Watch how they respond. Learn their patterns. Knowledge is more powerful than strength." The first lesson was simple but revealing. Eli had noticed that the aliens moved with a rhythm that repeated daily. Every morning they checked the enclosures, inspected the humans, and recorded their behavior. At midday they left for brief periods, returning in the evening to continue their surveillance. Eli realized that there were predictable windows when humans could act more freely without immediate observation. Using gestures, he explained the plan to the others. "We will practice during their breaks. We will not be loud. We will not act recklessly, but we will begin to show them that we are thinking, that we can plan." The next morning, Eli tested the limits. He began teaching small humans to move objects within their enclosures, sticks, small panels, and toys the aliens had provided. At first it seemed pointless, but Eli knew otherwise. The objects were tools, symbols, and practice for coordination. Humans learned to signal each other silently, moving objects in patterns to communicate messages that the aliens could not understand. During one particularly quiet hour, Eli noticed that a few aliens lingered unusually near the enclosures. Their eyes glowed brighter, scanning the humans carefully. He realized the aliens were beginning to suspect something. Their confidence was starting to crumble. It was time to escalate. Eli chose a small group of humans who had shown courage and intelligence. Together they practiced forming short sequences of gestures combined with sounds, simple commands, questions, and statements. Each human had a role. One observed the aliens, one relayed signals, and one practiced speaking aloud when no alien was watching. By midday, the humans were ready. A small panel in the enclosure had lights and symbols that could be manipulated. Eli devised a plan. If the aliens were distracted, a human could arrange the symbols to form a pattern the aliens might recognize, or, at the very least, to draw attention to human intelligence. When the aliens left for their midday break, Eli signaled to the group. "Now," he whispered. They moved carefully, placing the symbols in a sequence they had practiced. Then Eli spoke softly but clearly in full words. "We are learning. We understand. The words echoed slightly in the enclosure. For a moment there was silence, then the sound of footsteps. The aliens had returned early, as if sensing something unusual. One of them paused, its glowing eyes widening. It tilted its head, scanning the humans with visible confusion and alarm. Eli held his ground, staring at the alien directly. "Do not underestimate us," he said again. The alien recoiled slightly, almost as if afraid, and retreated to communicate with others. Its body language was stiff, cautious. Eli had done it. He had forced the aliens to acknowledge human intelligence in a direct way. But with recognition came danger. The aliens discussed the incident rapidly in a series of clicks and tones. They returned to the enclosures later that evening with new measures, dividing humans into smaller groups, restricting movement, and increasing surveillance. Their attempts to control the humans were more careful, but they were no longer confident. They had underestimated humans, and now fear had entered their calculations. Eli knew this would only escalate. He gathered the humans once again. "They will try to control us," he said. "They will think we are dangerous. We are not reckless, but we are learning. And learning is power. Every word, every gesture, every observation is a step toward freedom." The humans nodded, their expressions firm with determination. They had learned that they were not powerless. They had learned that their voices mattered. And under Eli's guidance, they were beginning to understand that intelligence could challenge control. The next morning, Eli noticed something unusual. One alien stayed near the enclosure long after the others had left. Its eyes flickered with curiosity, almost admiration. Eli realized that some aliens might not be entirely hostile. They were beginning to see humans as something beyond pets. That knowledge was both an opportunity and a risk. Eli decided to use the opportunity. He approached the alien cautiously, keeping his gestures slow and non-threatening. Then he spoke in words carefully chosen. "We want to learn. We want to understand. We are not just toys." The alien paused, its body rigid. Then it tilted slightly, almost in acknowledgement. It did not respond with words, but its actions, observing, recording, stepping back, suggested that it had understood at some level. Eli smiled faintly. Communication had begun. He returned to the group of humans and shared what he had seen. "Not all of them will resist us," he said. "Some may learn to see us as equals in their own way. Watch them. Learn from them. Step by step, we can grow stronger." Eli also realized that he needed to protect the younger humans. The aliens' fear could lead to harsh measures, and any display of defiance could result in punishment. He devised signals and safe zones within the enclosures, places where humans could hide or communicate without being noticed. Days passed, and the humans became more coordinated. They moved in silence, tapped out messages, and used gestures to communicate complex ideas. Eli taught them to observe the aliens not just for fear or survival, but to anticipate movements, predict reactions, and prepare for the next step. Then one evening, a new event shook the enclosure. A small device designed to entertain and test humans malfunctioned. It started sparking and shaking violently, threatening to injure one of the younger humans. Eli acted immediately. He shouted clear, urgent words, warning the others to move back. With quick gestures and guidance, he led the humans away from danger. The aliens arrived seconds later, their glowing eyes wide with alarm. Eli stood tall, speaking directly to them. "We can think. We can act. We can save each other." For the first time, the aliens seemed truly unsettled. They had not expected a pet to act with intelligence, to perceive danger, and to respond decisively. Eli had shattered their assumptions. That night, Eli addressed the humans in hushed whispers. "We are not just surviving. We are learning. We are growing. And soon the aliens will have to see us as what we truly are, not pets. Not objects, humans." A small cheer rose from the group, quiet but full of energy. Hope was spreading, growing stronger each day. Humans were beginning to realize their own power, not in strength alone, but in intelligence, strategy, and communication. Eli looked through the translucent walls of the enclosure at the alien city beyond. The towers shimmered under the violet sky, lights pulsing in a rhythm that the humans had begun to understand. Patterns could be learned, weaknesses could be discovered. And humans, once thought harmless, were awakening to their true potential. As the stars twinkled faintly above the alien towers, Eli whispered to the group one last time before sleep. "We have spoken. We have acted. The next step will be even greater. They will never forget that humans can think, and soon they will never underestimate us again. The night carried a quiet promise. Humans were no longer silent. They were learning, communicating, and preparing, and when the time came, they would act, not as pets, but as beings capable of intelligence, strategy, and courage. The morning sun filtered through the translucent walls of the enclosure, casting soft violet light over the humans inside. Eli moved among them, checking on everyone quietly. The group had grown more confident over the past days. They whispered to each other in the secret language Eli had taught, sharing observations and small discoveries. Fear was still there, but it was no longer the dominating force it had once been. Eli's mind was already planning the next step. The humans had learned to communicate, to observe, to act subtly. But now they needed to show the aliens that their intelligence was not just reactive, it was deliberate. They needed a display, something the aliens could not ignore, a proof that humans were capable of strategy, understanding, and coordination. He gathered the group in a quiet corner, speaking softly but with purpose. "Today we take a small step," he said. "We will show them we can work together. They will watch, and they will realize that we are more than they think. But we must be careful. Every move must be deliberate." The humans nodded, faces tense with anticipation. Eli had divided them into small teams. Each team had a role. One group would observe the aliens' movements, another would manipulate objects in the enclosure to form signals, and a third would practice speaking or gesturing in ways designed to confuse and amaze the caretakers. The first part of the plan was observation. Eli led a team to a corner of the enclosure where the aliens often lingered. From there, they watched patterns, recorded reactions silently, and noted small details. Every flicker of an alien's eyes, every tilt of a head, every pause or hesitation was noted. Once the observations were complete, the second group began their work. Using objects in the enclosure, small panels, sticks, and toys, they arranged them into sequences. The patterns were simple, yet organized in ways the aliens could not have expected. Eli had taught them to use rhythm, repetition, and symmetry to convey deliberate intent. The third group, guided by Eli, practiced speaking and gesturing together. They combined sounds, movements, and expressions to form short, coherent statements. At first, the humans were hesitant. Some forgot the sequences, others stumbled over words, but Eli encouraged them patiently, reminding them that even small successes mattered. By midday, the humans were ready. The aliens returned for their routine inspection, confident that the usual patterns of observation and control would continue. But today, Eli and his group had prepared something different. As the aliens approached, the humans began their coordinated actions. Objects moved in carefully planned sequences, tapping and clicking against each other. Soft words were spoken in unison, creating the first true display of coordinated communication among the humans. The aliens paused, their glowing eyes widening as they watched the spectacle. Eli stepped forward, speaking clearly and confidently. "We understand. We plan, we can act." The words echoed in the enclosure, sharp and deliberate. One alien froze completely, its body stiff. Another tilted its head repeatedly, trying to make sense of what it saw. The humans continued their display, moving objects, gesturing, and speaking together. The aliens exchanged rapid clicks and scribbles, clearly unsettled. Eli realized the display was working. Fear had entered their eyes. The aliens had believed humans were harmless, incapable of strategy or coordinated thought. But this was beyond anything they had imagined. The aliens retreated to the corner of the city, whispering among themselves. Eli knew they were planning, calculating, trying to understand how a species they thought weak could act with such intelligence. But Eli also knew that humans had proven something vital. They could be heard, they could act, and they could work together. That evening, Eli gathered the humans. Their faces were bright with excitement, though some still carried traces of worry. "Today we showed them what we are capable of," he said. "They may try to control us more tightly now, but we have taken the first real step. We are no longer just surviving. We are awakening." The humans nodded, whispering among themselves, eager to learn more, to improve, to grow stronger. Eli smiled faintly. He had begun a transformation, not just for himself, but for all humans under alien control. Over the next few days, Eli continued teaching. Humans learned to observe more carefully, anticipate the aliens' movements, and coordinate in silence. Each small success strengthened their confidence. Some began attempting longer sequences of communication, combining gestures, sounds, and even small movements that conveyed abstract concepts. One morning, an unexpected challenge arrived. The aliens introduced a new, more complex device, one designed to test humans' intelligence further. It had moving panels, lights, and symbols intended to confuse and control. But Eli saw an opportunity. He studied the device carefully, noting patterns in its movement and behavior. He realized it could be used to amplify their message to the aliens. Eli divided the humans into teams again. Each team had a task. One group would manipulate the device, another would coordinate gestures and sounds, and a third would observe the aliens' reactions. The plan was risky. A mistake could bring punishment or worse. But Eli knew they were ready. When the aliens returned, confident in their control, the humans acted. Objects moved in sequences, lights blinked, and soft words echoed in coordinated patterns. The device responded perfectly, amplifying the humans' actions and making the display impossible for the aliens to ignore. The aliens froze, their glowing eyes widening. They tilted their heads, scribbled rapidly on floating devices, and whispered in clicks and tones. Eli stepped forward, speaking clearly. "We think, we plan, we are capable." The display lasted for several minutes, long enough for the aliens to fully comprehend that humans were no longer just pets. They had intelligence, coordination, and awareness. Fear and confusion flashed across the aliens' faces, and Eli knew they had succeeded. That night, Eli addressed the humans once more. "Today we prove something important," he said. "We are not objects. We are not playthings. We are humans. We can learn, we can communicate, and we can act. And one day we will be free." A young boy who had been silent for days stepped forward, speaking softly but clearly. "We are not harmless." Eli smiled, feeling the weight of their progress. The humans had begun to understand themselves, their capabilities, and the power of their voices. Each small action, each whispered word, each coordinated movement was a step toward awakening. Over the next several days, the aliens changed their approach. They increased surveillance, tried separating humans into smaller groups, and monitored them more closely. But Eli and the others were ready. They had learned to adapt, to observe, and to coordinate quietly. Every action they took was calculated, every word carefully chosen. Eli realized that they were no longer just surviving. They were learning strategy, communication, and patience, the tools of power. The aliens had underestimated humans, and that mistake would not be forgotten. One evening, as the stars glimmered over the alien city, Eli gathered the group in secret. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we take another step. We will act together in a way that cannot be ignored. We will show them that intelligence is not limited by size, shape, or origin. We will awaken fully." The humans listened intently, their eyes shining with determination. The fear that had once ruled them was fading. They had learned to trust each other, to communicate, and to think beyond the walls of the enclosure. Under Eli's guidance, they were becoming something more than the aliens had ever imagined. And as the violet night deepened, Eli whispered one final thought to himself. "The awakening has begun. And soon, the aliens will understand that humans are never harmless." The violet sky of the alien city stretched endlessly above the enclosures, glowing softly as the stars began to twinkle. Eli stood in the center of the largest enclosure, surrounded by the humans he had guided through days of quiet learning, secret communication, and careful observation. They were no longer timid, no longer silent. The spark of courage and intelligence had grown into a quiet flame, ready to shine. Eli's mind raced with plans. The aliens had increased surveillance after the last display, clearly wary of human coordination. But they still underestimated the full potential of what humans could do when united. Eli knew the time had come for the next step, an act that could not be ignored, one that would force the aliens to truly recognize humans as intelligent beings. He gathered the group in a secluded corner of the enclosure. The humans leaned in, faces tense but determined. "Today," Eli whispered, "we act together. Every movement, every gesture, every word matters. We will show them that we are not toys, that we are capable of understanding, planning, and decision. We will speak, and they will have no choice but to listen. The humans nodded, their eyes bright with anticipation. They had come a long way from the frightened, silent pets they had been. Each had learned gestures, sounds, and subtle ways to communicate that the aliens could not anticipate. They understood patterns, strategies, and the power of coordinated action. Eli assigned roles carefully. One group would observe and signal the aliens' movements. Another would manipulate the objects and devices within the enclosure to form patterns that conveyed intelligence. A third group would speak in carefully chosen words, demonstrating understanding and reasoning. Everything had been practiced, rehearsed, and refined. When the aliens arrived, confident as always, the humans were ready. Eli led the display. The objects moved in synchronized patterns, lights flashed in deliberate sequences, and the humans spoke in unison. Their words were clear, concise, and meaningful. We understand. We observe. We plan. The aliens froze. Their glowing eyes widened, their bodies stiffening. They had never seen anything like this. One alien tilted its head repeatedly, as if trying to comprehend how being so small and previously underestimated could display such intelligence and coordination. Another scribbled frantically on its floating device, but even that could not capture the full depth of the demonstration. Eli took a step forward, speaking directly and confidently. We are not harmless. We are capable. We are humans. For a moment, silence filled the enclosure. Then, a faint murmur of clicks and tones rose from the aliens. They conferred rapidly, clearly alarmed, but also intrigued. Their previous confidence had crumbled. They had underestimated humans at every turn, and now the truth was undeniable. Humans were intelligent, aware, and capable of independent action. The display continued. Lights blinked, objects moved, and words formed in the air like soft music. The humans spoke not only with their voices but with their actions, demonstrating planning, coordination, and understanding. Eli watched the aliens' reactions carefully, noting fear, surprise, and fascination in equal measure. They were learning, slowly, reluctantly, and uncomfortably, that humans were not mere pets. When the display ended, the aliens retreated briefly to discuss. Eli used the time to address the humans. We have done what we came to do, he whispered. They see us now. They cannot ignore us. But this is just the beginning. We must continue to learn, to communicate, and to plan. Every day, every action matters. The humans nodded, their faces set with determination. They had come a long way, but Eli knew that the next phase would be the most important. They needed recognition, not just from fear or surprise, but from respect. They needed the aliens to understand that humans were intelligent beings deserving of acknowledgement. Over the next few days, the humans continued their coordinated actions, each display more deliberate and impressive than the last. They manipulated complex devices, formed intricate patterns, and spoke longer sentences. Each demonstration pushed the aliens closer to full understanding, forcing them to confront the reality they had refused to acknowledge. One morning, Eli noticed a change. The aliens no longer approached with complete confidence or casual control. Their movements were careful, their eyes flickering with a mix of caution and respect. They spoke to each other in urgent clicks and tones, and sometimes paused to observe before taking action. Eli realized that recognition was finally beginning to take hold. That afternoon, a particularly brave human, a young girl who had remained silent for much of their time in the enclosure, spoke clearly for the first time. We are not pets. The alien nearest to her froze. Its glowing eyes widened, and for a moment, it seemed almost thoughtful. It had not expected the humans to claim identity so boldly. Eli smiled faintly, seeing the courage ripple through the other humans. They were no longer afraid to speak, no longer willing to be silent objects of observation. Eli stepped forward, addressing the aliens directly. We are intelligent, we are capable. We have voices, we have minds, we are humans, not toys. For a moment, the aliens did not respond. Then, One of the senior caretakers stepped forward, its glowing eyes flickering slowly. It extended a hand, not in aggression, but in a gesture of acknowledgement. The act was subtle but powerful. It was the first real recognition from the aliens that humans were more than pets. Eli turned to the humans. "Do you see? They understand now. They cannot ignore us. But we must continue to show them our value, not through force but through thought, communication, and cooperation." The humans nodded, their confidence swelling. They had come a long way from frightened captives. Now, under Eli's guidance, they were recognized as beings of intelligence and strategy. Their journey had begun with whispers and gestures, but it had led to full acknowledgement. Over the following days, the enclosure became a place of learning and subtle communication. Humans continued their practices, observing the aliens, teaching each other, and speaking when necessary. The aliens, in turn, began treating them with caution and, in some cases, curiosity. Recognition had transformed the dynamic. Fear had shifted to cautious respect. One evening, as the violet sky darkened, Eli addressed the group one final time. "We have spoken, and they have heard. We have acted, and they have seen. But our journey is not over. We must continue to learn, to grow, and to demonstrate that humans are more than they have ever imagined." A young boy stepped forward, his voice steady and strong. "We are not harmless. We are humans, and we will be seen." Eli smiled, feeling a surge of pride and hope. The humans had not only survived, they had awakened. They had learned to communicate, to coordinate, and to assert their intelligence, and in doing so, they had transformed the way the aliens saw them forever. The violet stars twinkled above, casting a gentle light over the enclosure. Eli looked at the humans around him, each one a small but powerful spark of awareness and courage. They had begun as frightened captives, but now they were something else entirely. They were thinkers, planners, and speakers, beings whose voices could not be ignored. And somewhere in the alien city, the senior caretakers whispered among themselves, realizing a truth they had long refused to see. Humans were not harmless. Humans were extraordinary. Eli watched the stars and whispered to himself, and to the humans who now listened carefully, "We have spoken. We have acted. We have been recognized. And this is only the beginning. They will never underestimate us again." The humans murmured in agreement, a quiet chorus of voices that carried the promise of a new future. They were no longer pets. They were humans, capable of thought, strategy, and courage. And in the alien world, their awakening would never be forgotten. The night deepened, carrying with it the quiet hum of a city that had begun to understand a species it had once underestimated. Eli stood tall, feeling the weight of what they had achieved and the excitement of what was still to come. Humans had spoken. Humans had acted. And now, humans had been recognized.